is yo girl Cadillac. Yes, I'm Cadillac Dixon. I'm the Draw My Life prison wife. I'm the legally blind artist that is rapping and painting for justice. Hoping, girl, to see justice before all phase two black. Yes, it's your girl Cadillac. Anyways, I'm coming through so that I can go ahead and finish reading this closing arguments of the state attorney, the assistant state attorney. It is late at night. It's past 2 a.m., but I'm just trying to get this done. Before we get into that, I do want to show you, because I have been fighting for my husband for the last 21 years. We did start out trying to fight legally, but really there is no justice in the land. Like, the first way you're going to start trying to fight is through an appeal. And then we didn't even, in Marcello's case, there was no appeal, because we filed it, and then still we didn't have much money, so he went with a appeal public defender. And when we met with that appeal public defender, he told Marcello straight out, look man, I ain't got no money, I can't fight this case, ain't nothing I could do. But what he did do was he said he could let me borrow the transcript. And I went to a neighborhood Kinko's and I had to pay to copy it. That was about it. That was it. Nothing else was done. I don't even think he filed the motion or anything, or if it did get filed, because I think the last public defender had filed for an appeal, but it quickly was just dismissed. It was nothing. Then Marcello also filed a 3.850, I believe what it is, saying that the reason he lost his trial was because of ineffective counsel. I actually do believe he should have been granted that, because without the now we know a lot more about it now than we knew back then, but we just knew some ish wasn't right. There was something not right. How do you lose a case? And we actually had another lawyer, Mr. December. He has now passed away. He was a great lawyer, attorney here in Orlando. He actually was the one that when they first sent Marcello away with no bond, he was the one that I was able to pay to get his bond. And he was able to get out from that 2 months when our daughter was 2 months old, up until he lost his trial at 9 months, when she was 9 months old. So about 7 months, it gave them time to bond together, and she got so attached to him at that time. Let me show you that picture. There's some pictures of Marcello and Money together. Now, I am a graphic designer and an artist, so I do a lot of things. I'm sorry, I'm trying to see how to hold this so you guys can see. But let me show you. I illustrated this. I don't want it to look small. Why is it small? Okay, hold on. It was just showing it really big, and now it's showing it small. Like, why? Now it's doing some other random stuff. Hold on a second, guys. That is not what I was trying to do. Go back. I don't know why it's showing it so little now. I wanted to show the whole... Girl, that just messed up my whole flow of this. Photos. Okay, so I don't want it to look small, so I guess this is how we'll try to do it. But I graphically designed this PDF. This was basically made to tell the story. Oh, it still wants to do it small, but I guess you might can see it, man. Of course you can't see it good. This is silly. Why is it doing this? I don't really want to see all that stuff there. But it's completely, it didn't do this when I viewed this before. Okay, so I have to move up a little closer. So 2001, we started our family. Okay, this is an illustration of Marcello, and he basically was there while I was pregnant with Money. He was a perfect father, everything. He never ran away from his responsibilities. When I went in labor, he was right there by my side. These are some illustrations I did to a song that I entitled, but it's going to be a book as well that I'm illustrating, telling the story of Marchello Jackson. I want to tell it in such a juvenile way that everybody can understand why he's wrongfully convicted. Can I get one more time? Let me try to make this big. I do not like this being small like this because it did not do this before, and now it's doing this. It's like devil don't never stay off your tail, not off my tail. He he be after me all the darn time. I guess it's easier to see it through this view then. Okay, you were right there when I got pregnant. You never once ran away from your responsibilities. When I went in labor, you were right there by my side, holding my hand and saying, "Baby girl, it's gonna be all right." We were the picture perfect family. Then this is a picture of Marcello and Money. Showing it small, so that is obsolete. Don't need to show it like that. That's another one. He was so overjoyed when he found out he was gonna have a little girl. So this was the best time of our lives, 2001. I couldn't believe I had a child with my soulmate, and we were just so in love and just over bubbling with joy. But 2 months later, 2 months later, you were at the wrong place at the wrong time and with the wrong homies. Then I illustrate this is the day in question. That's basically cousin jumping out the door and bailing, and Marcello just sitting there like, what the heck? This is when the officer had him on the ground, told him to hold him at G point and told him don't move. And here we go right here. This is the way Money started visiting her father at 9 months through a several-inch thick glass. This picture, I love this picture of Money and Marcello. That was their interaction. That was very soon before he lost trial. She was so in love with him. I drew it too. I drew a little hand painted shirt. I used to do hand painted shirts to try to raise money for his legal defense. So I painted this little shirt for her and it said Daddy's Little Girl. This is a picture of me cutting his dreads off because the way they said that they identify him was a black guy with dreads. And he cut his dreads off also to find employment. He was trying to work at the water park, and they were saying that they can't employ him with dreads. Back then, dreads were not, or locks were not acceptable. Okay, this one, will that one show pretty big? Nope, it show pretty small. Why is it looking like this? It was not doing this before when I viewed it. Now all of a sudden when I'm trying to show y'all. Okay, there we go. Okay, leading up to trial. Like I said before, his public defender did not really do too much of anything. He just kept saying, hey, take the trial. I'm sorry, take the plea, take the plea, take the plea, please take the plea, please the plea. I actually got a rap called You Better Take the Plea. If you accused in a crime, you better take the plea. You ain't got no money, you better take the plea. You ain't got a good lawyer, you better take the plea. Hey, take that from me, take it to trial. To send you up Shit's Creek. But this was the last time when Marcello met with his public defender. He was just take the plea, take the plea, take the plea. No, 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 I didn't do nothing. I can't take no 17 years for something I didn't do. So he says, are you going to take the plea? He says no. And then this is Marchello here. He's like, I can't take 17 years for something I didn't do. Then the lawyer replies, well, kiss your daughter goodbye. And that's the last meeting before he prepared this defense that we're listening to now. Now, the defense that I'm seeing, now here we go. This is when I was in trial, but we ain't to that part yet. When I was only one went to trial with him, and that's me. That's the lawyer telling me to be quiet or he's going to hold me in contempt of the court. That's me sitting there crying while they're reading 40 years, 40 years, 40 years. Like, I can't be quiet. That's the state lawyer. And then that's Marchello and his public defender. Oops, sorry. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So I've been years working on stuff, music and books and all types of stuff. And this is the part that broke my heart, girl. When I seen them put him in cuffs, judge sitting there just straight face. I'm like, what the heck going on? I'm sitting there crying. He tells me, so Marchello says, can I just give her a hug? Like after this, because honestly, none of us thought that he was going to lose trial. Because as we sat through this trial, you could tell, and everybody knew these guys were lying. The cops, they were lying because they kept getting caught up. They weren't saying the same story. So we thinking we going home. This is about to end in about an hour. We going home. And we had no inkling that he would never come back home after this. So when they took him in cuffs, we're like, what? Huh? What? Are you kidding me? How? No weapon you're charging him with. No fingerprints, no DNA, no nothing. Just the word of these two guys that I guess God said, and the police. I mean, that was it. That was it. Okay, and they all were lying. One saying the driver got away, and two saying Marchello ran, and three saying that the weapon is missing. That weapon ain't missing. Y'all got that weapon. It just ain't gonna turn up what you wanted to turn up. But he was like, can I hug her, please? Just one more hug before I go. And they was like, no, you're coming with us. This is me. I rush out let's see, can increase that. Yeah. So I rush out. This is after sentencing day. I rush out the courtroom and I go and I lay on the street. Oh, it died. Anyways, I go and I lay on the street in front of the courthouse and I'm just crying because I remember running down the escalator and I ran out the door and I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know what, I'm just crying. And people are like, can I help you, ma'am? Can we help you? I'm like, just get off of me. Ain't nothing you can do. Just get off of me. So I'm like pushing people off of me. And I run outside and I run out front of the courthouse and I just lay there on the side of the road, just laying there in the road. And it wasn't until I seen his public defender, his standing public defender, because he was not from the public defender's office. He was, in fact, a crime specialist. He was a actual private lawyer that they had to get him because, remember how they said that driver wasn't caught? But yet, the public defender's office was already, that driver was their client already. And Marchello became their new client. And they said, I'm sorry, we cannot defend Marchello. There's a conflict of interest because that would be like trying to defend both sides of the case. And we have reason to believe that Marchello is going to implement our client. So he basically was like, I can't defend both sides, so I have to let Marchello go. In that case, that's when a private lawyer came in, and we thought that he was just finna, oh my gosh, this is sent from God. We don't just have a public defender, we have a crime specialist. But he told us in the beginning, he was like, I got this guy off and it was blood here, blood there, blood everywhere. And I got him off. And we're trusting him and believing that, okay, this is going to work out, Marchello. You're going to come through this trial. They don't have nothing on you. Like, for real, this is... So what ended up happening, I really believe they have behind the scenes things that happen. They have alliances behind the scenes. When I watched the interaction between this private lawyer and that state lawyer, like between recesses, they were laughing and joking and passing candy. I had illustrated that as well. They were laughing and joking and passing candy. But during trial, he's like, my client, your client, your client. But then in between, hey, you want an Altoid? Like they were laughing and like they were just some good old friends. And to be honest, I believe that he somewhat put a defense together for Marchello, but I think also he was basically on the state side. He kind of just wanted Marchello to plea. He didn't really want to defend Marchello. And without him, what I found out through research later is that, remember how that first trial came around, I believe it was in January of 2002, and nobody showed up. There was no alleged victims. And because those alleged victims that should have been suspects did not show up, they had moved from Orlando to Vermont when this happened. And Marcello's own standing public defender was like, hold on, he asked for a continuance. And I'm like, why would he ask for a continuance? Because what should have happened, because nobody showed up to press the charges against Marchello should have been let go. But he asked for a continuance of the case. And then he petitioned the court to have money. He first paid out of his pocket. Now remember, we couldn't afford the surveillance cameras that could prove Marcello's whereabouts. But this man came out of his own pocket and paid for airline, for hotel accommodations, and for his food to go out of town to subpoena the guys, because they were trying to run and hide, to subpoena the guys to come back and testify against his own client. So when he got all that bill racked up, he petitioned the court to pay him back for it. And I do have that in Marcello's files. So though he was in our face acting like he was defending Marchello, behind Marcello's back, he actually still was working on the state side, trying to secure that conviction. Because I don't understand how, if you had just kept your hands off of it, these guys didn't show up, you wouldn't even had to do a trial. Because those guys were running. They did not want nothing whatsoever to do with this case. Why? Because they should have been implemented in this case. That's why they wanted nothing to do with it. They know that Marchello did not rob them. They know that there was no type of carjacking going on in that situation. They know there was no kidnapping. They know that they were not taken against their will. They were being driven in the hood, across the street from the club, to go get right. And we're going to be taken back. The cousin was going to get up. The cousin was finna drop Marchello off to his house, his cousin house he was staying with, right down the street. He's going to drop little Marchello off. Then he going to serve these dudes. Then he going to go back to the club, get out the dude's car, and go on about his business. That was how it was supposed to be. That's what was really happening. But the court would never allow that scenario to be placed But they did allow a scenario of being taken to a lake to be drowned. Like, where we get evidence of that at? That is something that was concocted between the time that the original statement was written and by the time trial happened. They tried to escalate this to a hate crime. And that's how they presented it in front of the jury, as a hate crime, as a these dudes finna be dead out of here if, if the cops didn't stop this vehicle. And in fact, the judge does say that I would like to be lenient on him. If he was my son, I would love to be lenient on him. But the fact is, if Marchello Jackson was not stopped, those two guys would be dead. They would be dead. So just so he feels the wrath of what he's done, but he's going to be lenient on him. He said, I want to give him life, but just so he has a second chance at life, I will only give him 40 years. Well, you tell me what's the difference in that? A few years? You went in at 19 in the system and you get out at 60 something? That's pretty much life to me. But I mean, still grateful for you can get out and maybe die a free man, but they've taken your life. He's missed everything in his daughter's life. We missed having more kids. We were a new family, and all of that just went to hell when this happened. So that public defender, though he had some good things in his defense, as you can hear, and he was really pinpointing, because a case is supposed to stand on the evidence. They're basically convicting Marchello off of circumstantial evidence. And when you convict somebody on circumstantial evidence, like I even looked up, can you charge somebody with a weapon if you do not recover it? And when I looked that up, they say you cannot charge them with the weapon if you do not recover it unless there is beyond any shadow of a doubt that that weapon was there, that that weapon was used, that it can't be nobody else but that one person. And they could have proved that, the state could have proved their case or disproved their case. But I believe the state didn't want to take any measures to prove this because they knew it would have proved something different. That's why you're asking, why didn't they check those wallets? Because that could have been clear evidence, clear-cut evidence. They didn't check it because they didn't want it to come up with what, that would collide with what their officer wrote. They didn't want to collide with him. They have to side with him and back him. They didn't want to check and dust the car for fingerprints. They didn't want to do none of these things. But they made it into something like, hey, we gotta, honestly, they should have just dropped that ish. All them charges should have been dropped because you had no evidence. Without evidence, you gotta let this ish go. But they still pressed forward. That state attorney was so sorry. If you've seen her defense, she was so freaking sorry. She was just like, use your common sense, people. Like, that's all she said through the whole thing. The whole thing. She was not that good. And I'm like, how in the heck these people sat through this? Seeing that they were getting caught in lie after lie. How did you get your wallet? Oh, I got it this way. The other one, I got it that way. How did you get in the backseat? Oh, I got it in the backseat like this. Oh, I got in the backseat like that. Okay, where did you go? One say we turned right. One say we came across the street. Okay, how did you? Everything conflicts. Even with the police. Oh, one said, oh, he ran like a track star, football field. Oh, he didn't ran. Oh, he ran up a little bit. Oh, he was, but the evidence shows where he was arrested, he didn't run. He couldn't have run. What he did, like that. And that was it, because you can't do no more running from the landing of the car to where he was sat on the ground by the police, said, hey, walk towards me, sit on the ground. That's not running distance. That ain't even darn near walking distance. So how he ran? Why are you saying he ran? I really believe the reason they have to say Marchello ran. Now they're saying the two quote unquote black guys, colored guys, ran, which now you know one of those colored guys is white, is a white male. So that means that this white officer came and let all three white males go. That's what that is. Let all three white males go and arrested the one black male when all four should have been suspects. And it should have played out through investigation to rule them out. You shouldn't have ruled them out right there and said, oh, yep, you're clearly a victim. Let all three white males go and kept one black male and took his whole life. Okay, and also, one more thing before I get back to the closing statements. I actually, that day, like I said, I was laying on the street crying, and I'm like, because they just broke my heart. I did not get up until I see Marcello's acting public defender, come out of the courthouse. And I walked up and approached him. And before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, he said, do you know why they convicted him? I said, yeah, because he's black. That's how I said it. And he was like, yeah, that's really the only reason, honestly. He said, now what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to get a lawyer that will fight for his life. And from then, I've been trying to get up money for lawyers. I'm just a broke joke. I don't care what I try. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've been a cosmetologist, but I ended up being disabled. I went to graphic design school. Disabilities messing with me. Can't get that off the ground. I'm an artist. I sell paintings far and few in between. I work, but now, I'm injured, so it's hard to work. I could never get the money up. Like, it just is not in the cards for me to get that money up. I set up a petition, a GoFundMe. It's like everything I do just crumbles and crashes and burns and does not give any results. Though, I've actively been fighting this for 21 years. But, so he told me, he was like, find a lawyer that's going to fight for his life. And he said, you're going to have to appeal. Then he said, don't worry about it. He'll only do about 10 years. So by him saying that, that's what initially kept me holding on, that he will only do about 10 years, because he had a minimum mandatory of 10 years. It was a 40-year sentence, minimum mandatory of 10 years. And we did not understand what that meant. And how it was explained to us was he had to at least do 10 years day for day. And then after that, they can see, how much more time he has to do. So literally 11 years later, I call this lawyer and I'm like, oh, so what's going to happen with Marchello? Is he going to be? And he was like, they was like, I never told you that. 40 means 40. Like, you freaking kidding me? I literally held on to dear life to this 10 years. And you telling me it, huh? And what's so funny, when I talked to him, when I called, and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking 11 years later, this man is not going to know who I am. He's not going to. So I was like, hi, my name is Keita, and I'm calling because my husband, Marchello. Oh, my gosh. This man said, I know who you are. He said, you ain't even got to explain. I know who you are. And I was like, okay. And he was like, he said, that case is the case that made me quit criminal justice. He said all they were doing back then was railroading black men. These are the exact words came out this man's mouth. He said all they were doing were railroading black men. And I couldn't do it no more. And then he left the conversation saying, just hope that the laws in Florida change. Well, that's something we got to hold our breath on. Because with our governor, with our leadership, they're not, they're not, they don't want nothing to do with criminal justice reform. They don't want nothing to do with prison reform. Florida's DOCs are to critical capacity and inhumane, just as you see how Corey Miller is taking a stand in Louisiana DOC, saying how they're inhumane and how they're, look, Florida is to capacity, to the point where they were saying that if we don't do something, because Florida decided we should get rid of parole. We need to keep these folks forever. Like, for real. Let's never let them out of our bogus ass system. Let's never let them out. Any bill that is proposed, then Florida, you have one of the highest time served in Florida. So off of Marchello's 40-year sentence, he has to serve 85% of it. He first had to do that 10 mandatory minimum of 10 years, which he did that over a decade ago. He's 21 years in on his conviction. It was actually 22 years, but remember, he got out on that bond for a portion of that first year. So I don't know. They're not looking to. So you got to do 85%. Plus, Florida, back in the late 90s to early 2000s, that's when they started all of this, just giving out life. They were going crazy with life sentences, and they created this new thing called 1020 life. I got a poem about that. Let's do that real quick. I'm in love with someone I can't be with. Sorry, I messed up. I'm in love with someone I can't be with. It's so hard for me to let go. So I sit and I wait so patiently with the hopes that he will come home. Before I lay down at night, I close my eyes. I pray the Lord sends him home. But when I open my eyes, the fact remains that I'm still all alone. It happened a few years ago. I looked for him, but he was gone now. Please tell me, where did he go? 1020 life, that's all I know. See, the Lord on my side is who keeps me strong. I dread the fact I must move on, but I've got my life to lead, and I'm the one that takes care of me. Now the messed up party was snatched from his seat. Now a father and a mother I gotta be now, but when it's cold, who gon' hold me now? And who do I talk to when I'm lonely now? See, I'm in love with someone I can't be with. It so hard for me to let go. So I sit and I wait so patiently with the hopes that he will come home. Before I lay down at night, I close my eyes. I pray the Lord sends him home. But when I open my eyes, the fact remains I'm still all alone. Yes. But yeah, they made that sentencing statute 1020 life. Do any crime with a weapon, 1020 life. That's why they desperately was trying to attach that weapon. That had just been rolled out right around a little bit before Marchello was during trial, right? A little bit before that. They had big billboards and stuff, and I promise you that 7-Eleven that 7-Eleven that Marchello was at prior, like he bought his drink and he walked from the 7-Eleven, and on his way his cousin like, hey cuz, you want a ride? He gets in the car is so close to the stop sign that it rolls the stop sign and it ends his life at that point. That 7-Eleven is so crazy. There was this huge big billboard that had an ad that said 1020 life. I'm like, this got to be too ironic. Too ironic. And they were marketing that. They wanted to use 1020 life. 1020 life. That's why they, no matter what, wanted to include that weapon. because they knew that was a surefire way to escalate. Now, since 1020 life sentencing statute, they have admitted has been really like basically that they were like time people up in that, like it was too much. They said they was doing it too much. They admit that we basically was using this on people that until 25 your brain ain't even fully developed. So they were saying that there was a lot of young men that actually could have been rehabilitated, but yet we went so gung-ho with 1020 life that now these people are basically gone. We could have rehabilitated them, but instead we just shelved them, right? So they admit that, and I think they said that it can't, like the future generations can't be sentenced under that, but people, anybody that's standing already under those 1020 life statutes, too bad for you. You kind of already there. Ain't no grandfathering in, nothing. You already are serving time under that. So Florida had just rolled out their 1020 life, and then also Florida got rid of parole. There's no parole system in Florida. They got rid of that in the 90s, right? So it's basically like, I don't know, they got rid of everything. They intend to keep you for life. And that's why we had that motto, come to Florida on vacation, leave Florida on probation, like for real. But anyways, let's get back. I hope it's not too long of a read. Where we are now, I am reading the closing statements of the then Assistant State Attorney, Miss Brennan, and I'm reading her closing statements, and I think I will stop the I don't know if Marchello's public defender is going to come back and rebuttal, but I'm going to stop after the closing statements, and then we'll do another video. Of course, if you want to follow the trial, is like I'm basically, what my intentions with this was to, one, read the trial out so I can like hear it, hear it. I can hear myself back, and I can hear the trial. When you hear things, it gets more into you than when you read. I am legally blind, so it is very hard for me to just read that white on black. It makes my eyes hurt and this and that. So anytime I'm looking for something in his case, what did they say about this? What did they say about that? It gets kind of difficult for me to skim through and look, and then I get overwhelmed and anxious and, put it down. So one, it's going to be a tool to help me. And two, you can actually hear what happened in that courtroom setting when I say that he did not get a fair trial, rather than me just saying, oh, he didn't get a fair trial. Let me show you, let me tell you, let me let you hear the inconsistencies. So that's the whole purpose in that. The rest of the trial you can find in the playlist. I do have a playlist, Free Marchello, Wrongfully Convicted Florida Man. And it starts out talking about Corey Miller and his fight for his wrongful conviction, to fight his wrongful conviction, and his taking a stand against inhumane situations in Louisiana DOC. It starts out there, then it goes into, it made me pick up my torch for my husband, so it goes into Free Marchello, and then it goes to a lot of the different things I've done over all these years trying to break his case. Like, it's been constant battle. And then it goes into kind of covering the story of Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez and his father are maintaining that Tory Lanez is wrongfully convicted, basically. I don't know if he's been sentenced, so I got to do an update on that story too. So I promise you, once I get through these transcripts, I'm going to get back to learning the case of Corey Miller and getting you an update on Tory Lanez. And then I want to do some other stories because there's some faceless people like Marchello. Nobody cares about if Marcello's free or if his life is being, wasted and DLC. They don't care because he's nobody, basically. I mean, he's nobody to the world, but to me, he's my everything, you know? So I want to do some other stories of people that are wrongfully incarcerated. I believe it is far more than we want to admit because these trials have become routine. It's been routine the way that they botch people up and how they botch these trials and how we don't get our civil rights and how we don't get our constitutional rights and stuff like that. So let me get into the reading. I'm gonna turn this light on. I didn't turn it on here. Did y'all know I'm legally blind? That light is kind of for me. Ugh, see? All right, so let's get back to reading. Oh, first, I better plug in my charger because I don't want this phone to go dead. I need my laptop to go dead as I'm reading. It's late. We got to do this quick because it is late, guys. I'm sorry. Just trying to get it done. So let me plug in mine. That's the tablet. That's dead. All my devices are old, barely working on one leg. But they always going dead. But you know, we work with what we got. I work with what I got. I do appreciate the things that I do have. Okay, worry about what I don't have, girl. Okay, so let's get to the transcript. And if you are following along with me, thank you so much. I know this is probably boring. I know everybody is not interested. I'm trying to make it as interesting as possible. But even if you're not interested in it and it wasn't, you know, it's annoying to keep hearing it. It is going to be a resource tool that will help myself, basically, as I fight Marchello's case, as I continue. Okay, so let me zoom in and we're going to pick back up where we left off this morning. All right. Well, heck, he runs because of the kidnapping and the carjacking and the robbery. What he doesn't know is he runs right into a patrol car. That's right there, happens to be patrolling. Officer Civils. Hold on. This is offset. Okay, hopefully that's better. Not even in response to this, just happens to be riding down Robinson, sees the two of them running, screams out her window, "Hey!" Sees Rivera out of her peripheral, so she knows something's up. First of all, she knows something's up because the two people are running. No, that's a lie. One person. There ain't nobody else there running. Screams out her window to get run sick. It doesn't make sense. It says screams out her window to run. And then in brackets it has sick. I don't understand that. Says they both stop and then Rivera gets up a little bit more and they essentially, you know, catch the defendant there and the other guy gets away. I wonder why they had to make that lie up though. Marchello never ran. We actually drove by that cul-de-sac today and I showed our daughter that. And I'm like, you see, this is the cul-de-sac where the car was stopped. And that's where they said in the arresting affidavit that your dad was basically sat on the ground. And I said, Money, does it look like you could run from here to there? It's literally less than, it's a cul-de-sac, the railroad track, and then the road. So Marchello, the cul-de-sac right here, the car was here. Marchello stepped out the car. All of them stepped out the car, except for the driver ran. And the officer that was standing here on the road told Marchello to walk towards her at G point, and which in turn he walked towards her, and she told him to sit on the ground. So that's how the distance he moved. But they keep saying that he ran, and he did not run. But you know, if he didn't do anything, why would you think, just that why these, and she keeps pausing, why would the two guys in the car, why would you think they would lie to the police if they stayed there? If they stayed there, no, baby, Marchello stayed there too. So then why would you think Marchello would lie to the police? I don't know if they made any sense. If you could follow me, if his cousin gets out and starts running, why should he run? He didn't. I don't know why they portrayed it as though he ran. Why would he think, because he had no conversation whatsoever, these two in the back, why would you think that they wouldn't? See, this is where, because she's spending so much time talking about Marchello running. And she also spent a lot of time talking about how there was no conversation in that vehicle, that it was comedic, that there was no conversation in the vehicle. But the reason there was no conversation, because it literally was so short from the beginning of the pursuit to the end. Marchello probably wouldn't even have time to put his seatbelt on. So I don't know how much conversation you could have in the amount of time that you put on a seatbelt, because the spot is so small. So I think if he had a hone more in on those facts, my client did not run. But he actually says his client ran. I'm like, hold on, that's incriminating. Why are you saying he ran? Like, that's why it's like, he basically was playing both sides. He was basically playing both sides, trying to make it look like he's defending Marchello, but then, we finna sink this Negro. So I don't understand. But he should have honed in more about, my client did not run, and they don't have no weapon. Where is this dang on weapon? How did this weapon get out this situation? Because my client did not run. That's what he really should have been honing in on. They saw him jump out as the driver. And why would he think that, and the reason the driver ran, because the driver was out on bond. He already had like a case. That's why he jumped out and ran. He said he could not go back to jail. This is why he ran. Marchello had no priors. Marchello really had no interest in running. Like, honestly, just like they said, why would the two guys run? They didn't run. Marchello didn't run either. They saw him jump out as the driver, and why he think they would say anything other than corroborate, that everybody's innocent in the car. He's innocent and nothing's going on. I mean, doesn't the defendant's story make zero sense and isn't corroborated at all by any of the other evidence here? There's no evidence there. There's no evidence. So what are we corroborating? He's got to formulate it to the evidence. Like, well, the cops saw me get out of the car, so I've got to give the reason why. And the cops found $60 on me, which was not at all what they said at first. They said 80, remember? So I've got to give a reason why. But it doesn't make any sense and really doesn't jive with any of the other evidence here. There is no evidence there. Where's your freaking evidence that you should have gathered? Think about it. If he can drive a stick shift or not, because that was really sort of bizarre, that whole line of questioning. It really didn't make no sense. But Marcello's public defender told him it was best to lie and say that he could drive a stick shift. And Marcello, after that meeting, I remember he was so upset. He's like, why is he telling me to say I could drive a stick shift? I don't even have a license. I didn't even drive. Like, girl, like, why am I saying I can drive a stick shift? And I believe they seen through it because I did Marcello's testimony. And I believe that part just made Marcello look stupid by him saying, yeah, I could drive it. And then it was certain things that I see that the jury picked up on when he said he put it in part. And it was like, huh? Like, I guess you don't put a stick shift in part. So basically he's saying that he knows how to drive a stick, but you know he can't know how to drive a stick because he's not even explaining it correctly. But that was something from his lawyer who advised him. This was a 40-something-year-old man to a 19-year-old boy, advising him it's best if you're going to say you know how to drive that stick shift. Okay. Can you drive home? Yes. Do you have a license? No. Do you have a car? No. Yeah, none of that did make sense. And that's all they put him up on the stand and asked. Why didn't you ask him, did you run? They didn't even ask him the things that needed to be said. Like, I don't think his testimony even helped or did anything. They didn't let him get up there and, hey, I didn't do this. You know what I mean? But I guess that is coming soon because I forgot that I don't know how I skipped that. I did this all out of order because I jumped straight to the police testimony. Girl. Okay, but I'm trying to put it back in order. I'm going to get it in order of the way that the trial went. Do you ever drive? No. Whose car have you driven? You know, I mean, on and on and on. Well, finally, 4 years ago, he drove a stick shift suddenly. Well, tell me if that's not plausible. He probably drive it 4 years ago. And he couldn't drive it on August 12th because it ain't the easiest thing to do is drive a stick shift 4 years after the last time you drove it. That's because he didn't know how to drive a stick shift at all. Use your common sense here. Who does the evidence corroborate? What evidence? There is no evidence. Y'all destroyed that. Your officer destroyed the evidence. Why would he run? Why would he think that the victim, why would he run? And he didn't run. Why would he even think the victims would say anything, about him because they just picked him up at 7-Eleven, apparently. And nothing's happening, nothing even said. Why would you, Mr. Nevins, why are they in the back seat and there's an empty front seat for the defendant to get in? Why? Answer, they're boyfriends. Who hasn't sat in the back seat with your boyfriend? Answer 2, they're going in the hood. They're being driven in the hood to go get right. Who finna just sit all up front and you're some pale, clean-cut white guys about to go in the hood? Does that whole ordeal doesn't even make sense. It does make sense. And it's a 2-door car. Of course, I'm about to sit in the back. Just because you driving me in the hood to go get right don't mean I want to be sitting up front with you. I'm going to sit in the back. Take us in the hood. They could have been trying to hide themselves, basically, because they were leaving the club. And they ended right back up at the club, which makes no sense. Why would you go back to the place that you were so deathly afraid? Who does that? But I don't know. Okay. Why were they in the back? So that's why they were in the back. I mean, that's totally, I've done that before. Like, rode with somebody and I get in the back with whatever passenger. If they hugged up, booed up, we getting hot. Oh, I'm sorry, I probably can't say that on YouTube. Y'all want to be booed up across the seats? Or you going to sit in the back with your person and baby, we finna get right and, Like, it makes sense. It does make sense, to be honest. What, are they tired? His cousin is a chauffeur. Yeah, he sure was. Chauffeur into the hood. Yeah, he sure was good. And they can sit in the back and there's just an empty seat there. I mean, why do you have a stranger driving your car when you're in the back seat? Those are questions that they should have researched. That's true. You should have researched all sides of that. Not just said, oh, we've been carjacked. But you could have, and you said it took place in the parking lot. Parking lot has surveillance. Why didn't you prove they were carjacked? And then you lie and say nobody else was around when the club was just getting thick. People were just pulling in that one way in and that one way out. And it's on a main highway that never freaking sleeps. You can remember he said it's a fence around the club. But you could see everything happen right from the street on that club. So that as well does not make sense. So you didn't prove that they were carjacked. You didn't, not at all. Not at all, not an ounce. And you could have done it, but you chose not to. And I'm gonna ask, why would you choose not to? If you can slam dunk this case, why wouldn't you? Why would you leave it up to the jury with all these different holes in it and leave it up to them to decide? Okay, his cousin is a chauffeur and they can sit in the back and there's just an empty seat there. I mean, why do you have a stranger driving your car? And I don't think it was a stranger. I believe they actually knew who he was. That's their man. That's their get right man. I don't think he was no stranger. Being, why do you have a stranger driving your car when you're in the back seat? It's not as bizarre as in the front seat with him. I mean, a little stranger, yeah, but you know, you're in the back seat. You're not even in the front seat of your car. And then let somebody you don't even know. How do they know he don't know them? Did they investigate that? How do you know? You don't even know. You're just taking their words because they're victims. Oh, I forgot. You don't even talk to. You don't even, nothing's even said. They get in the front and you're in the back. Think about the victim's demeanor. The officer says they were very upset. How they're hugging each other. Everybody was upset in that case. Even Marchello, they proved that Marchello, they said he was sweating profusely and this and that. Everybody in the whole case was upset. So does that mean Marchello was also carjacked as well? If he was upset? Just being upset and hugging does not, that's slammed up proof that they were being robbed. Okay. Officer says they were hugging each other. How they immediately are saying they've been robbed. One of them vomited, and I mean, why would they make this up? Why? Because we want to cover our asses. We were going to the hood to go get right. We don't want to incriminate ourselves and tell the police, hey, yeah, police, we about to go do something, but you know, you kind of caught us in the middle of it. Who's gonna do that? Anybody gonna do that? Well, I mean, the defense obviously wants you, they want you to think they're buying substances. I think that's plain. That's why it's been thrown out there. It's highlighted for you that they're buying substances. But here's zero evidence whatsoever, and zero evidence. Always remember, the opposite is true of what she's saying. Though there's zero evidence that they were going in the hood to buy substances, there's zero evidence that they were carjacked, kidnapped, and robbed. There's no evidence in that either. So always see the opposite as well is true. I asked officer, any evidence that this was drug involved? Related anything? Why you didn't ask officer, is there any evidence of a carjacking, of a kidnapping, of a robbery? There's no evidence of that either. Okay, I mean, Mr. Nevins and Mr. Wintle can't help where they're kidnapped to, that they left the club and were taken into, going into God knows where. Now you're telling me, let's think about this for a minute. Okay, so they're lying about the setting. I've known this club for a long time. It was basically a staple in Orlando, Florida for, I think when I did research, because I was doing research about finding out if they really had security and security cameras. And I believe the club came about possibly in the 60s. And if I'm incorrect, somewhere around there, maybe the 70s, I don't know. But this was a staple club. This club been here forever and ever and ever. My childhood church is right down the street from that club. So many times coming from church. Sunday night. Girl, don't we go to church on Sunday night? We used to. It used to be packed. That club would just be, as we getting out our evening service, people are just pulling into that club. It was always someone at that club, even if the club wasn't happening, because it also was a hotel. But Sunday nights, just as my cuz, I have a video, I'll link it in the description box below, where he used to frequent that club. That club is now closed down, which boo-hoo, there's no way to corroborate nothing now. The whole evidence is gone, but there's a lot of stuff that's still like online and things like that. And thank God I did visit and basically record the area before they completely screened it off and before they tore up that entrance, because it's very good that I documented where that entrance of that club was, so that when they said that they seen that car come out that club, it's proven they couldn't have, because it's not a straight shot across. You have to veer over some and then go down. So it's very good that I did go and do that when I did do that. But now it's kind of blocked off or whatever. But my cuz explains how Sunday nights were the best nights. And this is things that I didn't know. He said it was free night. They had different rooms. Y'all go check out that video. That this club was banging on that Sunday night. And they had a famous dance. A famous dance that took place. The shows. He refers to the shows in the two alleged victims refers to watching the shows. And the first thing that popped out to my cousin was like, well, how they were watching the shows earlier? The shows don't even happen till after midnight. And remember that this happened, they allege, at 11:55. And they claimed that they came out to an empty parking lot, being there from like, what did they say? It was daytime. I know they said it was still daytime, and they were there for hours, and they came out and they were basically about to go home, they allege. They said they were about to go home for the day. And they came out to the parking lot and nobody was in the parking lot. There was no security. There was no one around. They were parked in the far back corner by the lake, by the fence by the lake. And that's when they had two different stories. One said Marchello had approached them on their way to the car. The other one's story was Marchello approached them once they got into the car and said, hey, do you have a cigarette? And as he reached to put his head down to look, and said, all I got is Newports. And when he lifted up his head, Marchello had a weapon, and he felt cold steel next to his nose. He demands that they get in the back. One says they specifically asked how they got in the back. The first one says they ran around and got in the back of this two-door car. So as you robbing this person, you got to let the back seat up for them to get in the back seat. And then he said that the other colored guy, the other black guy, other colored guy that y'all see is actually white. He looks white. He's an African-American male, but he's one of those pale ones. And now he's basically switched his nationality. this time that he checked in. But saying that he came and he was on the passenger side, the two were in the back. The other guy said they didn't even let us out. I crawled over the seat and got in the back seat. So they don't know how they got in the back seat. The other one said he think his boyfriend went around the other side. Okay, so y'all stories there really don't make no sense. So as Marchello's switching sides and holding weapons on you and y'all get in the back seat, there's conveniently no one around when this is the biggest club night and the dance is about to start. Have you ever been to a club? If you've ever been to a club, y'all know. The club, and for him to be parked that far back, most likely, just exactly what my cousin was saying, that club was already, that parking lot was packed. It was packed. So you're telling me that the empty club, you're painting two different settings. And that's because you want to explain away any witnesses that could have been around. That's how you're making it. It can't be no witnesses. You're making the setting a vacant club when it in fact was not a vacant club. And then you're saying there was no security out there. Why would you not have security there? That doesn't make sense. Those are the things that occurred to my cousin who frequent this club. He was like, they testimony don't even make no sense, to be honest. It's like you had to know the club to understand it. Just like you have to know that street to understand how there could be no conversation, right? Okay. So left the P house and we're taken. Oh, but that was my point. I'm so sorry. That how all that took place, how could that conveniently have happened, that they were carjacked, kidnapped, and robbed right there in that parking lot, and then they pulled off? Like, that's not even logical. It really isn't. And then found out later they did have security in the parking lot. So why did you make all this up? And why didn't you just pull the surveillance? I mean, this would have stopped all this dispute back and forth. It would have solved it, because it definitely should have caught them switching sides and pulling weapons on people. It should have caught that. Okay. And they were going to God knows where they were supposed to end up. They're going into a high crime neighborhood where substances are sold. I mean, that's the only evidence you have. And that is that they are in a neighborhood where substances are sold. But you know, some type of neighborhoods, you already know those type of neighborhoods where if you ain't got no business there, you don't go through there. Like that type of neighborhood. Like basically, they would have stuck out like a fucking sore thumb had they been going through this neighborhood, to be honest. And a lot of people are kind of scared to go through the neighborhood. So it makes total sense why he's being driven into this neighborhood. That's just like me. Girl, I'm from Chicago. I was born in Chicago. And I have a lot of people that ain't just going in certain neighborhoods. Even if they grew up there, they not just going in certain neighborhoods. Unless you with somebody, other than that, you stand about that neighborhood. But they're not driving. But the defense wants you to think, yeah, that's what this is all about. Even though there isn't any evidence of that, and there's no evidence to prove her as well. I'm going to shove it out there and shove it in front of you and hope you buy it. Just like she shoved that lake situation and they bought it. They shoved that out there. But okay. There's been no evidence whatsoever they were involved in anything. There's no evidence of Marchello either. Why would you make this up? Why would Marchello make it up? Like everything she has, I can rebuttal it. And you could have settled this. It wouldn't have been this back and forth had you not, your officer first tampered with the evidence. And two, you did your work and brought the actual evidence to court. Why would they make this up? And how could they both come up with the same version of events? And why are they immediately saying, we've been robbed? We've been robbed with, I mean, the car is fine. The guy with Mr. Nevins, who doesn't have a license to drive, nobody's doing anything wrong when the car is stopped except the driver who ran the stop sign. If it's totally not, the situation, there is no evidence whatsoever that this was substance involved at all. How do both victims have the same story and tell the police? How the defendant's story makes no sense. Why the wallet is on the passenger side door? Because that guy that's in the back, he was already sitting in the front. And he could have dropped his own wallet. He could have, he could not have. But she could have settled that by taking that wallet and taking it in. I'm sorry, not her, because she wouldn't have done it. She's the state's attorney. But the officer should have took that wallet into evidence and had that wallet dusted for prints and seen if in fact Marchello Jackson's fingerprints were on that wallet. That's what they should have done. And if y'all had did that and y'all would have showed me that Keita, baby girl, Marchello fingerprints all over this wallet, he did this, then there would be nothing for me to fight or argue. I would have to back off. But you didn't do that. Instead, you said he had that wallet all day, every day in his hands, touching all over that wallet. And you found it on the floorboard. Well, one says it was on the ground, one says it was on the floorboard, and then the other guy says it was on the floor ground. So y'all got all these different stories, but the police said that he found the wallet on the floorboard, right? And that's what he wrote in. But what he should have did was taken that wallet into evidence and had it dusted. And did it turn up Marchello's fingerprints on those wallets? The other guy that said Marchello took his wallet, somehow he ends up with his wallet back in his pocket. So they didn't research nothing. So we're just taking their stories again at face value. There's no evidence whatsoever. So if you could take their story at face value, why can't you take Marcello's at face value? Was substances involved at all? How both victims had the same story to tell the police. Well, the police wasn't so up and up. That guy was not so up and up. How the defendant's story make no sense. Why the wallet is on the passenger side door, outside passenger side door, on the floorboard, on the passenger side, where Officer Savage is where he picked it up. Think about the timing of this. Think about what the event was for the victims. If you think this is whoops, the police have just stopped us for driving, running a stop sign. So now I'm going to both come up with this convolute. We're being kidnapped and carjacked at G Point. And let me take out my wallet and throw it outside the passenger's side. Throw it outside the door on the passenger side. Does any of that make sense? That's not where they said that wallet was found. It wasn't found outside on the ground. Or does what Mr. Nevins and Mr. Wrongful tell you occurred to them happen is corroborated by the observations from the officer watching the defendants bail out of the car? Marchello never ran. They always keep saying he ran. Seeing the victim's demeanor here. They're both yelling, "We've been robbed." They're both telling them immediately. They're hugging each other. Please listen closely to the instructions in this case and remember the testimony in this case, what you heard from the witness stand, because you have to decide his story or Mr. Nevins and Mr. Wrongful. And I submit to you, it's Mr. Nevins and Mr. Wrongful, that are the victims in this case, and that each and every one of those charges has been proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The court, Mr. Sims, Your Honor, could you give me a time? The court, you have 12 minutes. Thank you. Reporter's notes, continue uninterrupted in volume 2. Is this the, oh, certificate of, oh, so that's the end. That's the end of this transcript. So the Marcello's lawyer does come back and rebuttal it. Where's that transcript? Do I have it? If I have it already open, I could start reading it. If I don't, then I better stop here. Oh, okay. I think I do. Yeah, volume 2 of 2. Afternoon session continuing, April 10th, 2002. Mr. Sims, let's do this backwards. Let's go to where she stopped and we'll go right up. Who weighs that the wallets were outside of the door by the passenger side? That's a typo because that's what he says. Mr. Wintle and Mr. Nevins. The state witness proves that to be false by his testimony. Officer Savage, I ID'd both of them. I got the ID off of Mr. Wintle. Did Marchello rob him of his wallet and then hand it back to him? Because they said, if you listen, they said Marchello sitting in his passenger seat, he's turned around, he got a weapon on these two. Hand me your wallets now. They give Marchello the wallets. Marchello looks, I guess he still got the weapon in his hand, so he do some maneuver to flip the wallet open. You ain't got nothing in this wallet? Okay, let me hand you your wallet back. Okay, give me your wallet. He gives him his wallet. He looks in it. You don't have nothing in this wallet? Okay, let me throw this down on the floor, or I'ma hold it and I'ma drop it, or whatever. And then he's like, give me something, give me something. And then, I know you got to have something on you. This is what they saying, Marcello's saying. I know you got to have something on you. And he remembers, oh, dog it. I got this on my separate outside of my wallet. I got this $60 I just borrowed from my bartender friend. And here, Mr. Jackson, if you take this, please just stop robbing and kidnapping and carjacking us, sir. So, how did he get his wallet back? And why wasn't his wallet confiscated as well and checked for Marcello's fingerprints? Okay. The state witness proves that to be false by his testimony. Officer Savage, I ID'd both of them. I got the ID off of Wintle. He gave me his ID. In the passenger floorboard, not in the dirt, not outside by the car, but another wallet. On the passenger's floorboard, I found Mr. Nevins' wallet and got his ID from there. How difficult is this process? If you know you're in the wrong place, but you don't know the system and you're afraid you've done something wrong and you're not sure what this guy is going to say, who's been driving, how hard is it for this? When the car comes to a stop to just say we've been robbed. Okay, there's my wallet in the floorboard, that long, and then you're set. Now you might say, well, they have all these details in their statement. Well, they certainly left out a lot of details out of that first that came up here today, because although the state says, well, they told the officers all this stuff, did you hear one of the officers say that they told him anything different than what was in the original statement? What was in that statement? You didn't hear any of that testimony. They didn't say that. And how hard is it once the officer decides two young white kids, they don't look harmful, they must be victims. Let me check your ID. Okay, you guys, go write down. You've been robbed. Yeah, go write down what happened. And they both said Evans or Nevins, excuse me, and Mr. Wintle and Savage, that they went over and they got either on the hood of the truck in a kind of dark area, which might explain why you don't write on the lines. And they sat there and wrote their reports. All right, so we're at the club, right in the back, and then asked for a cigarette. Yeah, okay. They're almost mirror images of one another. But when they got in here today to tell you about what happened, there's a little problem with how correct they were. Although they talked sense, although they added some things, oh yes, we were going to the lake, which neither one of them mentioned before. And again, I can't tell you how important it is what they've not mentioned, the words that will haunt you forever. We're going to ill you. It's not to either one of those statements. It's not in either one of their statements. And yet they say that's what they told us. That's what would be upsetting. We're going to ill you. Nevins, the guy with the dreads pointed a gun. He made us both get out of the car. We went out of the car and got in the back seat. Wintle, the guy with the dreads pointed. Oh, okay. He's doing the differences in their statements. That was good. So he really did do a decent job. He did a decent job, but he should have honed in on the lack of evidence. Wintle, the guy with the dreads pointed the gun at me. I had to crawl between the seats. I think Nevins went on the outside. That's a tiny thing, but that's what he said. And that's not consistent because they don't tell consistent stories on a little issue because those little issues are true. If your story is not true, you mess up the little things. And to come in and embellish after so long, to come in and say, we were going to ill you, he was going to ill you, that's that makes it much worse. That makes it seem real now. So that's how they can have the same story. That's why the wallet was on the floor in the passenger side. The evidence of that is actually more consistent with them making it up than their version of being carjacked. And they say both wallets were thrown by the passenger outside and again, remember, if that's so, show me some fingerprints. If that is so, show me the fingerprints. Baby, later for what y'all talking about. Later for what Marchello was saying, later for what they saying. Show me the dang on evidence. That's all that matters. Show me the fingerprints. If that is so, show me some fingerprints. Don't just say, trust us. We think this is what happened. Because the fact of this case, the hard cold facts that aren't the statements of my client or the statements of these two kids who are down in the wrong section of town, the stuff that's surrounded around there, they are equally believable as a carjacking or as a nefarious substance buy. They go, They cut the same way. He's actually being truthful. I mean, if you're gonna believe the story of them being carjacked, kidnapped, and robbed, you can just as easily believe the story of they were being going into the hood to buy substances. Because in either sense, either story, that driver still would have tried to bail because he had priors. I mean, I'm going to read these rap sheets. I'm not going to tell you their names or nothing, but I'm going to read their rap sheets. He had a prior. He was out on, whatever charge he was at the time. So either way, either story, that driver was going to bail. He was going to bail. Marchello didn't bail because Marchello he didn't know what the heck was going on. He didn't know, they didn't bail because there's no proof of anything that's going on. They did bail. They did bail. Y'all know how they bailed? Because after all this horrible event, they moved away. I don't understand. That's the part I don't get. Why did they move away? Why did they want nothing to do with this? You were kidnapped, you were carjacked, you were robbed, and they only caught one of the guys. You know that other guy is still there. You do not want him caught? You don't want Marchello set away? Why do you choose, rather than to come to court, you choose to move to Vermont? Both of y'all. Not just the one that came from Vermont. Both of y'all moved to Vermont. And you would have stayed in Vermont if Marcello's public defender didn't come and ask the judge to pay for him, the court to pay for him to go out of town to subpoena you at your front door. If he hadn't have took that limb to go out of town and subpoena you in person, you never would have came back from Vermont. So I'm not understanding how that makes sense. Who does that? I'm coming to court. These people just almost outed me. I don't know if they stay free, they can finish off the job. They know what I look like. I got to make sure that justice is served with them. So why do they run off? It doesn't make sense. And either story is just as believable as the other. We don't know what happened. That's why you have to deal with the evidence, because we don't know what happened. Nobody was in that car but Nevins, Mr. Wintle, Mr. Jackson, and missing in action, colored, black, white guy. Okay, the passenger side. The evidence of that is actually more consistent with them making it up than their version of being carjacked, and they say that their wallets were thrown by the passenger outside. And again, remember, if that is so, show me some fingerprints. Don't just say, trust us. We think this is what happened. Because the fact of this case, the hard, cold facts, that there aren't the statements of my client or the statements of these two kids who are down in the wrong section of town. The stuff that's surrounded around there, they are equally believable as a carjacking or as some nefarious substance buy. They cut the same way. So why assume that, well, the young black kid with dreads, he must be the bad guy. The young white kids coming from the club, they must be the good guys. I still tell you, it seems strange to me that a bartender gives you $60. Why wasn't the bartender interviewed? All of this is lost because this is a case that's 20 years old. They done lost all the evidence in Marcello's case. It's all gone. It's almost hopeless. But why didn't they interview the bartender? Did he say he say he was some close friend or something He said the bartender gave me, he said $60, but he wrote $80. And I don't know. I said I'd start from the back forward, but that's not my way. There's a big difference between 80 and 60. When you say that's what you lost, make no mistake. This is my client. This is what my client had. This is what Mr. Nevin said he gave. There's a huge difference. And he said this 22 minutes after it happened, so suddenly. Oh, a young black kid can't have $60 after getting paid for a week on Friday and have $60 left over. That's a huge difference. That's a conflict in the evidence. He conflicted himself. And there's no evidence that is true. That's why they dropped the robbery charges. Y'all know they were supposed to drop the robbery charges because even the judge said, look, you ain't finna charge him with no robbery because the money don't align. You can't do it. And the state went on and kicking and pouting like, oh, but he tried to rob him. He tried. And he was like, okay, you could pick it up as attempted robbery. Okay, that's a conflict in the evidence. And he conflicted himself. And there's no evidence that any officer ever heard, yeah, he told me it was 60. It's 80, and it's in evidence in black and white. All right, I've got to move. We don't have long. Lucky for y'all. They said any evidence of substance deal? No. Except that they're in a high substance area in a place they don't know. And they like to be together. They hugged each other when they got out of the car. They were in a relationship. That part, that's what everybody's ignoring that. So why not get in the back and let the guy take you to where he's taking? Is there any evidence of a substance deal? Well, tonight I'm going to take my 16-year-old daughter out to get pizza because mama and son go to confirmation. And on the way to get that pizza, if the police pull me over from running a stop sign, are they going to be able to say, hey, you know what? He wasn't going to get pizza because I had no evidence that he was going to get pizza. All I had was his word that he was going to get pizza. Or it's obvious he wasn't going to get pizza because I don't have any evidence of pizza crumbs there, or a fork, or a knife, or money. Well, of course you don't have any evidence of a substance deal before the substance deal goes down. You know how you can check back. You know, hindsight is always 20/20. One of those alleged clean-cut little boys, white little boys is how they refer to him, has a long history. When you research him, he has a long history of DUIs and substances and going to rehab and things like that. So he has a history of that. And then you can also go down the line of that missing driver. He has a lot of substance charges. He has a lot of them. So you could kind of look and see that, oh, these people do have dealings with substances. And you was in that high substance area. But they never would allow that to be entered into any speculation or anything. Well, of course, you don't have any evidence of a substance deal before the substance deal goes down. They're going out to find substances. They don't know where to find them. Miss Brennan, judge, I'm going to object. He's arguing evidence, facts not in evidence. The court, sustain. Mr. Sims, why do you run when you're a black kid in that area and the police are behind you? He's the only black one in that car. Just remember, the cousin that they keep referring to as a black guy, a colored guy, is so high yellow. He is pale, pale, pale. He's like Mariah Carey black. I mean, she's black, but you might not mistake her for being black, baby. She could pass. You remember how back in the day, it was several African Americans that would teeter that line, and they would actually try to pass as Caucasian people because they got treated a little bit better when they did pass as Caucasian people. So this is how that driver looks. So in all actuality and perception, to the police, to the victims, it looked like 3 white guys versus 1 black Marchello, 1 black guy. So it really looks like race is a big deal in this situation. Why those guys, because they're saying how innocent they look. I mean, people go off of, people are biased. You take your biasness to work with you. The officer take his biasness to work with him. He don't just say, I'm an officer now, I'm gonna take off my biasness. I no longer think the worst of these group of people. I no longer think because I'm an officer, but then when I go home, I still feel that way. I put it back on. No, you're gonna take all your biasness, you're gonna take every ideal that you have, and you're gonna apply it during your job. Honestly, that's how it goes. So, yes, they're gonna say these innocent looking guys, or Marchello actually did look innocent looking, but at the time he had dreads. Dreads were not as popular as they are today back in 2001. And people, I guess sometimes people look down on dreads. Like you couldn't even find a job if you had dreads back in that time, or locks, what you call them. So people do outright, like, I mean, they could have just looked and said, no, this guy look like he up to something. And, you know, they look like they harmless. Let's just, it could have went that way. We don't know. But all we do know, the officer that should have knew better never confiscated the evidence. They never checked the evidence, never dusted for fingerprints. Like, how do you do that? And they said he had been at that time, he was the one that said he was an officer. One of them was an officer for 1.5 years. That may have been Rivera. And he was an officer for 1 year. Or it could have been switched. Either he was an officer for just 1.5 years and he was an officer for 1 year. But he should have known, he should have known that you cannot obstruct evidence. Now he's destroyed Marchello's case. Now Marchello basically has no case because you've gotten rid of the evidence. You gave it right back to them, so we can't check nothing. That case was tampered with at that point. They should have never pursued this case. Or you should have dropped that robbery, both counts of the robbery and the attempted robbery. And then, of course, on that, the K-napping is not K-napping. It is K-napping with intent to commit a felony. The felony was the robbery. So that K-napping cannot stand. It's like Jenga. If you take that robbery off, that K-napping can't stand. So those charges are going off the board. So why didn't they prove anything? Why did they get rid of the evidence? Why did they not pull the surveillance? These questions are always going to remain. You have no reason to do that. If these guys definitely were being robbed and something was happening to them, you need to see those things. You need to slam dunk your case. You don't want to let this bad guy Marchello go. You don't want to get to court and chance that a person like me might be on your jury that ain't finna just go for the okie doke. You're not finna chance that, baby. You finna come with all your receipts. Why didn't they pull any receipts? Okay, Ms. Brennan, judge, I'm going to object. He's arguing evidence. Facts, not in the evidence. The court, sustain. Why do you run when you're a young black kid that in that area and the police are behind you and you're in a car with two very quiet white kids who haven't said a word and you've suddenly got a GUN in your lap? Where are we? We're in Orlando, Florida. We know why you run. And baby, the key word, Florida. We here, but we ain't necessarily equal here. Because suddenly, you're the black kid with the dreads, with two white kids in the back, and you got a GUN on your lap, and your cousin, your white cousin, just ran from the police. That makes no sense. I'm sorry, he said that makes sense. I'm sorry. That makes sense. It's a panicky thing. Sure, you can get out and say, hey, he just threw the GUN on me. Now that we're so far in the future, y'all know that talking with the officers, y'all already know that ish ain't working. They ain't trying to hear nothing you talking about. He just threw the GUN on me. I don't know these white dudes. And you're still going to jail? It's better to just run and hope you don't have to face it. You're going to jail when that GUN is in your lap. You know that. The victim's demeanor, they were upset. We've been robbed. Yes. Oh, that sounded like you got mail. We've been robbed. Yeah. Or they could be upset because they were doing something or about to do something illegal. Or they could be upset because I'm upset anyway. To be honest with you, I ain't doing nothing legal. But when the cops get behind me, I already get nervous and like overwhelmed because I know what could happen. So I get in that panic mode and I ain't doing nothing wrong. And then if I'm sitting up in this car and baby, you doing a high speed chase, that really gonna make me like panicky, like for real. No matter if I was doing something wrong or not, if I had no business doing it, because me, I already know they're not gonna believe me. Now y'all know that story of when I went to visitation to visit my husband and they accused me of having substances in my car. And I know God good darn well I ain't got no substance. I don't know nothing about no substances. I don't deal with substances. I ain't never had a drink or smoke or nothing in my life. So for me, I know I ain't got no substances in my car, but I'm still scared as hell because I don't know what you can do. And I know that whatever you do, you can make that ish stick. They can make that stick. I wouldn't trust my life in their hands like that. I mean, allegedly, so you can trust your lives in their hands. But me personally, I don't, because I see and I know what could happen. And I, myself, almost got wrongfully arrested for having substances when I ain't got nothing to do with no goddamn substances. So it's easy. And then who gonna believe me? That man kept swearing me down. He said DOPE. And I didn't know what it was. To be honest with you, I don't know I know it's a substance. But I had to call around to people and ask them what type of substance is DOPE. And I know that probably sounds crazy, funny, or whatever, but I don't know anything about substances. I don't do it. I don't be around nobody that do them. So how would I know? And he just kept on, you got DOPE in your car. You got DOPE. Either you let me search your vehicle or I'm taking you, if I find something, I'm taking you to jail now. How I know you ain't finna throw something? How you so sure that there's DOPE? You said dog sit on my car and I don't see no evidence of a freaking darn dog. Where the hell the dog came from, girl? So I know what could happen. So whether I'm doing something wrong, whether I'm not, I'm scared. I'm sorry. That's just me. I'm not just calm like, oh, I ain't did nothing. Like, baby, The victim's demeanor, they were upset. We've been robbed. Yeah, or they could be upset because they were doing something or about to do something illegal. Or they could be upset because they've come out a car and they've been at G point on them. A cop's GUN. And that's upsetting no matter who has a GUN on you. A GUN is a frightful thing. Now, why is everybody in the car quiet? Are we really asking this question? They are quiet because you guys know what's up. The new guy on the block doesn't know. You're not going to talk about what you're doing. He's getting a ride to his house from up there near the 7-Eleven, which is why the 7-Eleven surveillance should have been pulled. It's his house, which is a block and a half away from this car, where this car comes to rest. He was in his area where he lives. He wasn't out of spot where he's supposed to be. He was sweating profusely and was very nervous when the cops got him. Now, isn't it interesting that when he's sweating profusely and he's very nervous, he's considered, well, that's evidence he's a criminal. But when the two white kids are nervous and they seem really upset, that's evidence that they must be victims. That's a two-edged sword. Well, you know, if you're African American, you know you live under those standards. It's always like that. But I'm glad he pointed that out. That's a two-edged sword that cuts both ways. You can't simply say, well, yeah, he must be guilty. They must be victim. What's wrong? And you shouldn't do it. The whole drive the stick shift. Can you drive a stick shift? Yes. Now, if he wanted to make that up, yeah, drive a stick shift. I drive it all the time. He could have gone on that, but he didn't. He said, yeah, about 4 years ago, you asked me, Kelly, do you know how to wrestle? I'll say, yes, I do. When's the last time you did it? In 1980. I could do it though. It's 22 years ago. I'll do it again. I'll do it right now. I know how to wrestle. Doesn't mean that I've wrestled recently. I know how to drive a stick. Doesn't mean that I've driven a stick recently. It's ludicrous that if someone gave you money to get an item and you don't come back with the item, that they have to go back to him to explain to him why. They're all waiting for the item. I'm coming back to say, I don't have the item. The guy that took me there, he ripped me off, and now the police are involved. That's not ludicrous? Why go and explain why nothing's coming back for what you gave? You gave me this. I got nothing for you, but I got ripped off. Lastly, and then I'm going to be quiet. My daughter was running through some lines. Lastly, and then I'm going to be quiet. My daughter was running through some lines on Julius Caesar with me yesterday. She said, I'm doing this little thing today. Can you go through the lines? And I'm reading with her. She says something. She is Lucius, and Lucius is a servant to Brutus. And he falls asleep. While he's asleep, the ghost of Julius Caesar comes. And out of his sleep, Lucius says, the strings, my lord, are false. He's got a lute. I don't know if that meant flute, but it says lute. He's got a lute, and he's playing the lute. And he fell asleep with it. And some people, like Brutus says, oh, he thinks he still plays the lute. But what he felt was something that ran through him, through his dreams, which was the ghost of Caesar. The strings, my lord, are false. I said, that's what's happening here. What they are saying and how they're saying it, all of this other evidence that should be corroborating it, it's not there. The strings are false. That's not what happened. If you listen to the sound, what it makes, it sounds sour. It sounds sour because it's not true. It's not true because he didn't do anything illegal. He didn't, actually, nobody did anything illegal at that point except for the cousin ran that stop sign and evaded police. That's the illegal thing that took place. Whether what they were about to do, didn't do, was trying to do, that's the only illegal thing that happened. That cousin ran that stop sign. He evaded, he put the car in a high-speed chase format, and then he jumped out and ran from police. That is the only thing that happened illegal. It's not true because it didn't do anything, he didn't do anything illegal. He did something stupid by running. He did not run. It was proven he didn't run. Why do they keep saying he ran? And even his own defense is saying that. But he was going to jail either way that night. The strings, my Lord, are false. This does not ring true, what you've heard here today. And because of that, you must come back with the accurate, fair verdict. And you've heard it every time you call in here, you come in here. I don't know if you noticed it yet. All rise the jury. They say it. Even the judge says it when you leave. You are the most important element in a criminal case. We all rise for you because we show you the utmost respect for your job, which is to sift through facts, not theories, through facts, the evidence, not the theories around the evidence. If you sift these facts carefully, we're sure that you'll come back with the right verdict, a verdict of not guilty, because we all rise for you. We trust you to make the right, just verdict. From everything you've seen, and that alone is easy to reach that by the evidence. Conflict in the evidence and the lack of evidence. My Lord, the strings do not ring true, not guilty. Then the court comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break. Let me give you just about a 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back for jury instructions. All right. Whereupon, when that last break happened, that's when me and Marchello was kind of sitting together. He came back there. He was able to sit with me. And the lawyer came over and he was like, why don't y'all, you and your girl, go outside and just talk for a little bit to chill or whatever. And in my head, I'm like, for what? We finna go home. We literally sat there listening to them get caught, get crossed up because they weren't telling the same story. It wasn't consistent. They had a loose variation of the story they were going to use, but it was like the little evidence, the little what do you call those things? The little details did not align. And it made it, you could tell they were lying. Like, you're listening to me reading it, but if you actually were there, sitting there, seeing their demeanor. One guy was doing this the whole time. The one that they didn't want to add drugs, but this man was like this. Okay, so, and that's how he was sitting on the freaking witness stand. And then you got them not even lining up. You got the officers testifying, their statements are not lining up. It's close, but it's not exact. Y'all should have had a more harmonious, it should have been more harmonious. It's gonna be, each person is gonna say it different, but it's gonna kind of be pretty much similar. but their stories were different. Their stories were different. So I'm sitting there, we sitting there, and we're thinking he's going home. So the public defender, the acting public defender, was like, "Why don't you and your girl just go outside and just talk?" And I'm like, "For what? We about to go home." Like, they lying. Like, girl, who gonna believe what they saying? Ain't nobody sitting here believing this ish. The judge was getting emotional, hollering at them, hollering at the state attorney. She basically kept getting herself in trouble. She was basically trying to perceive, lie, and show the jury that Marchello had a prior arrest picture, and inferring that Marchello has a history. And she was caught in that lie when that judge said, you're skating on thin ice. You're trying to portray something that is not true. Marchello, in fact, had no priors. But your driver that's missing, your colored white black guy, had priors. He had priors, girl. And so basically, he was like, go out and just talk to her. So we had our last moments together, but we're thinking, hey, like, once this over, let's go out and eat. Let's go hang out. I'll be, we was going to be happy celebrating because he was about to beat this trial. There was nothing in our mind that could prepare us for what was about to happen. Justice failed us. The justice system failed our family. I suggest Marchello was only 20 at the time. He didn't know the system. I definitely didn't know the system because I definitely didn't know the system. He didn't know it. We believed in it. He believed in it tooth and nail. That's why he put himself through it. You wouldn't put yourself through a system you don't believe in. And I believed in it. I wouldn't have allowed him to go that far if I knew that the system really is rigged up and it's not just and fair as they portray it to be. So that was actually our last moments together, that recess. All right, guys, so I think it might be one more, one or two, I don't know how long, but it's going to be basically the judge is going to read the jury instructions and how the jury should charge, which they botched that as well, mischarging Marchello. Charging him with points for priors when you keep hearing it said that Marchello does not have priors. And the outrageous, emotional hearing those verdicts. Guilty in the highest with the weapon. Guilty in the highest with the weapon, 40 years. Guilty in the highest with the weapon, 40 years. Guilty in the highest with the weapon, 30 years. If we could go back, I wish Marchello would have took that 17 years. Whether guilty, whether innocent. Because we're 21 years in. 85% of 17 could have easily been 15 years. We've done 15 years almost a decade ago. Now it's never ending. Marchello has about 17 to 18 more years when he could have been done with this maybe 7 years ago. So whether innocent or not, wish he had just took the plea. All right, guys, I don't know what time it is, but I'll see you tomorrow. Hiss your girl Cadillac. I'm gonna leave my little laugh off because they got me a little emotional, girl.